Welcome back to the deep dive. I really hope you packed your sunscreen today because we are leaving the modern world far behind. We are heading straight into the heat, the dust, and the relentless flies of 1930s Iraq.
It is a setting that is, well, it's almost a character in itself in the story we're covering today. It's not just a backdrop, it's a pressure cooker.
Absolutely. We're transporting ourselves to the banks of the Tigris River, specifically to an archaeological dig called Tel Yerimja. And the vibe is, intense is really putting it mildly.
Right.
You've got this relentless sun beating down, the sand getting into your food, into your bed sheets, your eyes, and you have a small group of people isolated in this expedition house who are, let's just say, not getting along.
It's the classic closed circle mystery setup, but with a very specific, very atmospheric twist. You have the contrast of the ancient world, digging up pottery from the 4th millennium BC, and a very modern, very sharp, psychological drama playing out right in the living room.
I always love these closed circle stories. It's like Glass Onion or Knives Out, but instead of a private island, you are stuck in the desert with the people you work with, and you literally can't leave.
Exactly. And in this case, the isolation amplifies everything. Every single glance, every whisper, every tiny annoyance is just magnified by the heat and the proximity to one another.
And at the center of it all is a murder that seems completely impossible. We are talking locked windows, a guarded door, and a weapon that is, well, it's not a gun or a knife. It's something much more brutal.
It is. And to solve it, we have one of the greatest minds in fiction arriving just in the nick of time.
So let's not keep everyone guessing any longer. Let me just check my notes here. The book name is Murder in Mesopotamia book by Agatha Christie.
A truly fascinating entry in the Christie canon.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it actually draws heavily on her own lived experiences.
Right, because she wasn't just writing this from some cozy library in London. She was actually out there.
She was. Agatha Christie was married to a prominent archaeologist, Max Mallowan. She spent significant time on digs in this exact region of Iraq. She knew the layout of these expedition houses perfectly.
That makes so much sense.
She knew the silly jokes people make on a dig to blow off steam, and she knew exactly how quickly the tension can snap when you're stuck together in the desert for months on end.
That adds such a layer of authenticity to the text. Like when she describes the mud brick walls or the specific way the light hits the ziggurat, she is writing from memory.
Precisely. And our mission today is to unpack this story. We aren't just going to look at who to moon it. We want to look at the psychology of this entire group.
Yeah.
We really need to understand the victim, who is a very complex figure, and we want to see how Hercule Poirot unravels a crime that is rooted entirely in human personality.
There's this quote that jumped out at me right away, where Poirot says, "If I knew exactly what kind of woman Mrs. Leatheran was, I should know who murdered her."
That right there is the core of the investigation. It's not about cigarette ash or footprints this time. It's about the soul of the victim.
Okay, let's unpack this. But first, I think we have to talk about our guide for this journey. Because this story isn't told by Captain Hastings, and it's not told by Poirot himself. We have a very different narrator, and honestly, her voice is so refreshing.
We are seeing this entire world through the eyes of Nurse Amy Leatheran.
Nurse Leatheran, she's so practical. She feels like the only normal person in a house completely full of eccentrics.
She is the anchor of sanity for the reader. The source material describes her as a woman of a highest character. She's professional, about 32 years old, and what's crucial here is that she's an outsider.
Right, she's not part of the archaeology world.
Exactly. She doesn't care about the pottery or the cylinder seals or the history of the region. She's there to do a job.
There is that great moment early on where she looks at the Tigris River. Mrs. Leatheran, who has this very poetic, dramatic soul, calls it a dream river. And Nurse Leatheran is just looking at it thinking, well, that looks like muddy soup.
That's her in a nutshell. She is clinical. She is a hospital nurse. She is used to charts, checking temperatures, and following clear instructions. Dr. Riley, who is the local civil surgeon in the town of Hassani, actually recruits her specifically for this reason.
He wants her to go to the expedition house, not just to nurse a patient, but to observe, right?
Yes, he wants an unbiased set of eyes. He even suggests she write the account later, because she isn't colored by any previous connections to the university expedition.
Though she's a bit modest about her writing skills. She keeps saying she wants Dr. Riley to put the grammar right for her.
Which is such a clever device by Christie. It gives the narrative this very raw, very honest feel. Nurse Leatheran tells you exactly what she sees. If someone looks like a nice, clean pig, which she actually says about one of the young staff members, she just writes it down.
I love that. She doesn't have the patience for the so-called artistic temperament. She calls it like she sees it.
Mhm.
And what she sees when she arrives at this expedition house is a group of people walking on absolute eggshells.
The atmosphere is just thick with tension. You can cut it with a knife, and it all revolves around one single person, the wife of the expedition leader, Mrs. Louise Leidner.
Let's talk about Louise. Because she is not your typical murder victim. Usually in these Golden Age stories, the victim is either a complete saint or a cartoonish villain. Louise feels incredibly complicated.
She is. The phrase used to describe her in the book is calamitous magic.
Calamitous magic, I wrote that down because it just stopped me in my tracks. That sounds heavy. What does that actually mean in a practical sense? Is she supposed to be a witch?
Not literally, no.
Mm.
But it implies that her charm, her beauty, her whole aura is destructive. It is a paradox. She attracts people, she enchants them completely, but that enchantment always leads to disaster. Louise Leidner is a woman who simply needs to be the center of the universe.
So she's a narcissist.
In modern clinical terms, we might certainly lean that way. There's a very telling analysis in the sources where it said that she wasn't satisfied just being passed the peanut butter at the breakfast table.
Wait, I need you to explain that. She wasn't satisfied with the peanut butter.
It is a metaphor for casual, everyday interaction. Most people are perfectly happy if you just pass the salt and say good morning. You have a polite, surface-level interaction. Louise wasn't capable of that. She wanted to turn people's minds and souls inside out.
She wanted a reaction.
Exactly. She wanted to see what made them tick. The text says she treated people like a cat treats a mouse.
That is such a vivid image.
It really is. She would be incredibly kind one day. She'd be charming, listening to your deepest problems, making you feel like the most important person in the entire world. And then the very next day, she would be cruel or cold or mocking, just to see how you would handle it.
That is a terrifying quality in a roommate, let alone your boss's wife. Why did anyone put up with it? Why not just quit the expedition and go home?
That is the queen-bee dynamic in a closed circle.
Yeah.
She was the wife of the director, Dr. Leidner. She held all the social power. And you have to remember, they are in the middle of the desert.
Oh, right.
There is literally nowhere to go. You can't just go down to the local coffee shop to get away from her for a few hours. You are trapped inside the compound.
So it naturally creates this intensely polarized environment.
It does. On one hand, you have her husband, Dr. Eric Leidner, who practically worships the ground she walks on. To him, she is the Snow Queen. She's lovely, fragile, perfect. He sees her as this delicate flower that needs constant protecting.
And everyone else sees a predator.
Or at least a master manipulator. Nurse Leatheran picks up on this almost immediately. She notices that Mrs. Leidner seems to feed off the attention, even if it's negative attention.
So who are these people she's toying with? If we're going to understand the murder, we need to know the suspects. Let's do a roll call of the happy family, which I am guessing is a phrase used very ironically.
Intensely ironically. Let's start with the husband, Dr. Eric Leidner. He is a brilliant archaeologist. He's seemingly gentle, kind, and completely devoted to Louise. He is actually the one who hired Nurse Leatheran because he's worried about his wife's nerves.
He seems like the quintessential nice guy, the one just trying to keep the peace while his wife creates chaos.
He does. He acts as the buffer between Louise and the rest of the world. Then you have Richard Carey.
The architect.
Yes. On an archaeological dig, the architect is responsible for drawing the plans of the ancient buildings they uncover. Carey is described as very handsome, but wooden.
Wooden. That's an interesting choice of words, like he's stiff.
Mechanical is another word the text uses.
Sure.
He does his job, he's perfectly polite, but there's no life in him. It creates an impression of immense repression, like he is holding something back with every single ounce of his strength. He's also an old friend of Dr. Leidner, which complicates things.
Okay, so we have the devoted husband and the repressed best friend. Who else is in the crosshairs?
The Mercados. This is a married couple, Mr. and Mrs. Mercado. And honestly, they are a mess.
Nurse Leatheran really didn't like them much, did she?
Not at all. Mrs. Mercado is young, rather pretty in a scrappy sort of way, but she has these glaring eyes. She makes absolutely no secret of the fact that she hates Louise Leidner. She is constantly watching her, constantly whispering about her.
And her husband?
Mr. Mercado is a nervous wreck. He has this long, melancholy face, and his hands are constantly shaking. He's always knocking things over or looking completely terrified. Nurse Leatheran notices immediately that something is wrong with him physically. He's not just anxious. He is unwell.
And we definitely can't forget Miss Johnson.
Ah, the old sport. That's how she's referred to by the younger members of the team. She's the reliable one. She organizes the entire domestic side of the expedition. The food, the laundry, the supplies. She's British, stoic, keeps a stiff upper lip.
But she's clearly not happy either.
No. The source material strongly hints that she is harboring deep, repressed feelings. She remembers the days before Louise arrived.
That's a really key point, right? Miss Johnson mentions that before Mrs. Leidner came out to the dig, they were a happy team. They had silly jokes, they worked hard, it was simple.
Exactly. Louise changed the entire chemical balance of the group. She brought in this high-strung, demanding energy that turned them all against each other.
And finally, there's the outlier, Father Lavigny.
The French monk. He's an epigraphist.
Okay, pause for a second. Epigraphist, is that the person who digs, or is that something else?
Great question. An epigraphist is essentially the code breaker of the dig. They are the specialist who reads the ancient inscriptions on the clay cuneiform tablets or the stone cylinder seals. It is highly specialized academic work. He's new to the group, an outsider, just like Nurse Leatheran, but he is very observant. He watches everyone through his thick glasses.
So that is our cast, stuck in the desert, sweating in the heat, and walking on eggshells around this snow queen who just loves to play mind games. But here's the thing. Louise isn't just playing games because she's bored. She's actually terrified.
This is where the story makes a hard shift from a domestic drama to a psychological thriller. Louise Leidner is living in a state of high hysteria. She genuinely believes she's being hunted.
By her first husband.
Frederick Bosner. This is the backstory that Dr. Leidner eventually shares with Nurse Leatheran to explain why his wife is acting so strangely. Years ago, during the Great War, World War I, Louise was married to Bosner. He was a young man working for the State Department, charming, handsome.
But he had a massive secret.
He was a German spy, a traitor to his country. He was passing crucial information to the enemy.
And Louise turned him in.
She did.
Oh.
It was a patriotic act, but obviously it was also a profound personal betrayal of her husband. He was arrested, tried, and sentenced to death. But, and here's the twist, he escaped before the execution could actually happen.
And then he died in a train crash.
Supposedly.
Right.
A body was found with his identification, but it was in a horrific crash where many people were burned completely beyond recognition. Louise was officially told he was dead, but she never truly believed it.
Because of the letters.
Yes. The letters are terrifyingly simple. For years, every single time she tried to move on or get close to another man, she would receive a letter.
What did they say? I want to hear the exact text because the tone is so specific.
They weren't long, rambling rants. They were incredibly short and chilling. Things like, "You have disobeyed, now you cannot escape, you have got to die."
That just gives me chills. You have got to die. It's so blunt, so final.
And specifically, recently, since arriving in Iraq, she received one that just said, "I have arrived."
I have arrived. That implies he is right there. In Hassani, maybe even watching the expedition house.
That is her ultimate fear. She is convinced Frederick Bosner is alive and has finally tracked her down to execute her for her betrayal 15 years ago.
But here's the catch, and this is exactly why I love Nurse Leatheran as a narrator. She isn't entirely sure she buys it.
Right. There is a heavy dose of skepticism from the medical professional. She wonders, is Louise writing these letters to herself? Is this just another elaborate way to be the center of attention? To keep her husband focused entirely on protecting her?
It's the classic boy who cried wolf scenario. She's been so manipulative for so long that when she finally says, "A killer is stalking me," everyone just rolls their eyes and says, "Sure, Louise, whatever you say."
Exactly. Dr. Riley thinks she might just be deeply neurotic. The others think she's a malicious attention seeker. But Louise is visibly wasting away from fear. She even tells Nurse Leatheran about a face she saw at the window.
The face. This part felt straight out of a ghost story.
It really does. She describes a spectral face, pale and death-like, peering in at her through the iron bars of the window at dusk. She screams, but by the time anyone gets to her room, the face is gone.
And Father Levin, you saw it too, right? Or at least he claimed to.
He claims to have seen someone prowling around and peering in. So the question hangs in the air. Is it a ghost? Is it Bosner? Or is it a cruel prank?
Or is it just a hallucination brought on by the heat and the stress?
That is the debate, up until the day of the murder.
Let's set the scene for the crime itself, because the timeline and the location are critical to understanding why this is a locked room mystery. It happens in the middle of the afternoon.
Siesta time. In Iraq, in the 1930s, the heat at midday is practically lethal. So after lunch, the entire dig shuts down. Everyone retreats to their rooms to sleep or read. The house goes completely silent.
So Dr. Leidner is up on the roof sleeping, Miss Johnson is in her room, Nurse Leatheran is in hers, and Louise Leidner retires to her bedroom to rest.
Now you have to visualize the layout of this place. The expedition house is built around a large central courtyard. Her bedroom has thick, solid mud walls. It has one door that opens directly onto that courtyard. It has two windows on the opposite wall, but they are barred with heavy iron bars and kept closed to keep out the extreme heat.
And the door, is it locked from the inside?
It's closed, but here's the thing about the courtyard. It is the hub of the house. People are constantly passing through or working right there. The houseboy is out there washing dishes. Nurse Leatheran is in and out of her room. It seems physically impossible for a stranger to walk in through the main gate, cross the open courtyard, enter her room, commit a brutal murder, and walk back out without being seen by anyone.
But at the end of the siesta, that is exactly what they find. Dr. Leidner goes to wake his wife, and she is dead.
And the violence of it is really shocking. She hasn't been quietly poisoned. She hasn't been suffocated with a pillow. She has been struck on the head with a massive, heavy object.
The stone quern.
Yes. Now, we really need to explain what a quern is, because a modern reader probably pictures a little kitchen tool.
Yeah, I was honestly picturing something like a heavy pepper grinder or a small mortar and pestle.
No, a quern in this archaeological context is a massive artifact. It is a solid block of carved stone used for grinding grain thousands of years ago. It weighs well, it's incredibly heavy, you need two hands to lift it safely. It's essentially a small boulder shaped into a tool.
And where exactly was it found?
Lying right under her bed. And it had a dull, dark stain on it, along with a fragment of hair.
So, let me just get this straight. Someone walked into her room carrying a massive, heavy rock, bashed her head in while she was asleep, and then just left, without a single person seeing them.
That is the central puzzle. The windows were shut tight and barred. The door was the only physical way in. But the testimony of the servants and the entire team is completely consistent. No stranger entered the courtyard that afternoon.
Which implies
the killer is one of them. The happy family contains a brutal murderer.
this is the moment where the tension in the house goes from merely uncomfortable to entirely suffocating. Everyone is looking at everyone else thinking, did you do it? Did you actually hate her that much?
And it is exactly at this critical moment that a short, eccentric Belgian traveler just happens to be passing through Hassani on his way to Baghdad.
Hercule Poirot, talk about incredibly lucky timing.
Or fate. He is brought into the fold by Dr. Riley. What I really love about Poirot's approach in this case is how he completely subverts expectations.
He doesn't immediately pull out a magnifying glass and start crawling on the floor.
Not really. He says something quite profound. He tells Dr. Riley, I am not interested in footprints or cigarette ash. I am interested in psychology.
That is a pretty bold stance to take when you have a fresh dead body and a bloody rock.
It is, but he argues that since the physical evidence is so confusing and contradictory, the ultimate truth must lie in the people involved. He says if he knows exactly what kind of woman Mrs. Leidner was, he will know who murdered her.
Meaning the murder was a direct reaction to her specific personality.
Exactly. It wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It wasn't a random attack. It was a highly specific emotional response to Louise Leidner.
So he starts digging, but not into the earth like the rest of them. He digs into their secrets. He does start with the room itself, though. There's that weird detail about the stain on the rug.
Ah, the stain. It's a small, dark brown stain on the rug near the washstand. Poirot drops to his knees to examine it closely.
Is it blood?
Dr. Riley thinks it might be. Perhaps the murderer washed their hands at the basin. But the stain is very small, and Poirot is totally perplexed by it. He wonders why a murderer, in a violent frenzy, would stop to wash their hands so carefully that only a tiny drop remains on the rug. It just doesn't fit the profile of a messy crime of passion.
And then there's the roof theory. Since nobody saw anyone enter the door, they start wondering, could the heavy stone have been dropped from the roof?
This becomes the leading theory for a while. The roof of the expedition house is flat. The team actually sleeps up there in the summer. And Dr. Leidner was up there reading and sleeping during the time of the murder. The working theory is, could someone have dropped the heavy quern from the roof through the window?
But the windows are barred, and the gaps between the bars are small.
Exactly. The physics of it are incredibly tricky. Dropping a giant stone through a narrow iron gap and perfectly hitting a specific spot on a bed, it seems highly unlikely. But Poirot files it away. He keeps it in his mind.
So Poirot decides to change tactics. He initiates what he calls the truth game.
This is one of my absolute favorite scenes in the book. He gathers the entire team together. He knows perfectly well they're all lying to him. They're all sticking rigidly to the narrative that she was a charming woman and they all loved her because society dictates you aren't supposed to speak ill of the dead.
And Poirot just calls their bluff?
He does. He says, let us take the gloves off. He actively challenges them. He practically insults them just to get a genuine reaction. He wants to break their polite British composure.
And it works perfectly. The floodgates just open.
They certainly do. And this is where we really get into the red herrings because boy, does this group have some dark secrets. Let's talk about Mr. Mercado first.
The nervous wreck.
Poirot focuses right in on him. He notices the constantly shaking hands, the long sleeves worn even in the blistering heat. And in a very dramatic, sudden moment, he grabs Mr. Mercado's arm and forces the sleeve up.
And what does he find?
Needle marks. Tracks all up and down his arm. Mr. Mercado is a severe drug addict.
Whoa. In the 1930s at a professional archaeological dig.
Most likely using morphine or cocaine stolen straight from the expedition's medical supplies. It explains absolutely everything about him. His nervousness, his erratic behavior, his constant state of terror.
So did he kill her?
Well, let's look at the motive. Louise knew his secret. She had figured it out. And instead of reporting him to her husband or trying to help him get medical care, she was just holding it over his head. She was emotionally blackmailing him. She was keeping him in a permanent state of terror, constantly threatening to expose him and ruin his career just for her own amusement.
That is cruel. That is genuinely sadistically cruel.
It is. It fully confirms Louise's calamitous nature. But does it make him a killer? Poirot thinks deeply about it. A junkie might kill to protect his supply, or lash out in a panic. But Mercado seems far too weak, too fundamentally broken to pull off a highly calculated murder involving carrying a heavy stone boulder.
Okay, so if it's not the addict, what about the thief? Because Father Leaveny is not actually a father at all.
This is a fantastic subplot that Christie weaves in. Poirot quietly sends a telegram to Carthage, which is where the real Father Leaveny is supposedly from. And the reply comes back quickly. Father Leaveny is currently in Carthage. He never left.
So who is the guy at the dig wearing the robes?
A total imposter. His real name is Raoul Meunier. He's a highly skilled professional thief.
No way. So he completely infiltrated a university archaeological dig just by pretending to be a monk?
To steal the gold. The expedition had recently found some incredible gold ornaments and incredibly valuable ancient cylinder seals. He was there to swipe them and vanish.
So why is he a prime suspect for the murder?
Because the mysterious face at the window that Louise saw, that might have just been him checking to see if the coast was clear to steal things. Or he might have been caught in the act by Louise. But Poirot eventually dismisses him as the murderer too.
Why? That seems like a solid motive.
Because a professional thief doesn't brutally murder someone unless they absolutely have to. It draws far too much police attention. Meunier wanted to grab the gold and vanish quietly. A massive murder investigation shutting down the compound is the absolute last thing he wants.
That makes sense.
In fact, Poirot deduces that Meunier probably saw something highly relevant to the murder while he was sneaking around, but he couldn't speak up because it would immediately blow his cover and get him arrested for theft.
Okay, so we have a drug addict and a professional thief. But Poirot still isn't satisfied. He's looking for something more emotional. He turns his intense gaze back to the inner circle. Specifically, Richard Carey and Miss Johnson.
Let's talk about Richard Carey, the wooden man. During the truth game, his facade cracks. He admits to Nurse Leatheran that he absolutely hated Mrs. Leitner.
But it's not a normal professional hate, is it?
No. The vibe between them is very heavy. It strongly suggests a thwarted affair, or at least a deep, suffocating sexual tension. The implication is that Carey completely fell for her. He was victim number 2 of her calamitous magic, and she just played with him.
She reeled him in.
She made him obsess over her, and then she cold-heartedly pulled away.
So he hates her because he actually loves her.
Or he hates himself for loving her. He feels he has deeply betrayed his best friend, Dr. Leitner, just by having these feelings. That internal tension was eating him alive.
And what about Miss Johnson, the old sport?
This is arguably the most tragic part of the entire book for me. Miss Johnson was secretly, desperately in love with Dr. Leitner. She had been for years and years.
And she had to just sit there and watch Louise treat him like a servant.
Exactly. She watched this Snow Queen torment the mild-mannered man she loved. She watched her gaslight him, make him run around fetching things, worry him absolutely sick over these ghost letters. It boiled her blood.
And Miss Johnson actually figures the whole thing out, doesn't she? There's that incredible scene on the roof where she has a sudden realization.
Yes. She's up there talking to Nurse Leatheran, and suddenly she just stops dead. She stares at the parapet of the roof and cries out, "The window! I see it now!"
She realizes exactly how the locked room murder was done.
She solves the mechanical puzzle. She sees the angles. But tragically, she never gets to tell Poirot what she figured out.
Because that very night,
That night, Miss Johnson goes to bed. She always keeps a glass of water by her bedside because of the dry desert heat. She wakes up in the pitch dark, thirsty, and takes a deep drink.
oh God, this part is awful.
But it isn't water in the glass. Someone has sneaked in and substituted it with highly concentrated hydrochloric acid straight from the expedition's photography laboratory.
That is just horrifying. That is a visceral, agonizingly painful way to die.
It is brutal. She dies in unimaginable agony. And this horrific event changes absolutely everything for Poirot. Because a thief wouldn't do that, a panicking addict wouldn't do that. This is deeply personal, calculated cruelty. This is someone desperately trying to silence a witness who knows the truth.
It perfectly confirms the killer is one of the inner circle, someone with access to the lab and the bedrooms.
Absolutely. So we are finally down to the wire. Poirot gathers everyone together. He has analyzed the twisted personality of the victim. He has stripped away all the petty lies. He has identified the thief and the addict. And now he explains exactly how the impossible crime was committed.
Let's talk about the mechanics first. How did the killer get a massive stone quern onto the bed without ever entering the room? Because Miss Johnson figured it out. It was all about the window.
It's entirely a geometry puzzle. The murderer was on the roof the whole time.
Directly above her bedroom window.
Correct. Now, visualize this carefully. The window has iron bars, but there are vertical gaps between them. The murderer had carried the heavy stone quern up to the roof earlier. They attached a strong rope or a wire to it. They leaned over the parapet and lowered it down the side of the building, swinging it slightly so it slid right through the bars of the open window.
And Louise's bed is positioned directly under that window.
Yes. The bed was pushed up against the wall so her head was perfectly within range. The murderer lowered the heavy stone until it was hovering right above her sleeping head, and then they simply let go. Or they triggered a slip-knot release mechanism.
So gravity did all the actual work.
Gravity and ruthless precision. The massive stone falls, strikes her a fatal blow, and then naturally rolls off the bed and onto the floor underneath it. The murderer quickly pulls the rope back up to the roof and hides it. No one ever entered the room. No one was ever seen crossing the courtyard.
That perfectly explains the how, but it doesn't explain the who. Because to pull that off, you would have to be on the roof during the siesta.
And who was the only person officially on the roof during the siesta?
Dr. Leidner.
The devoted, mild-mannered husband.
But wait, why? He loved her. He worshipped the ground she walked on. He was the one desperately trying to protect her from the threatening letters.
Was he? Or was he the one actually writing them?
Oh my God.
This is the massive twist that defines the entire book. Poirot reveals the shocking, undeniable truth. Dr. Eric Leidner is Frederick Bosner.
The first husband? The World War I spy. The man who supposedly died in the fiery train crash 15 years ago.
He didn't die. He survived the crash, but he was severely disfigured. His face was burned. His voice changed from smoke damage. He aged prematurely. He completely reinvented himself. He studied. He became Eric Leidner, a respected, mild-mannered archaeologist.
And he just waited 15 years.
He waited. He built an entirely new life and career, and then, very deliberately, he sought out his ex-wife. He courted her all over again as a complete stranger.
And she seriously didn't recognize him at all.
People change a tremendous amount in 15 years, especially with severe facial injuries, a beard, and a completely new, gentle mannerism. And remember, she thought he was dead. She had absolutely no reason to be looking for him. He made her fall in love with him again, but as a completely different man.
That is just twisted. That is deeply, deeply pathological behavior.
It's not love at all. It is pure obsession. He wanted to own her completely. He wanted to prove to himself that he could make her love him again, even after she betrayed him to the authorities.
So why the letters? If he finally had her back, if they were married and he was the respected husband, why terrorize her?
Because he knew her true nature better than anyone. He knew the calamitous magic. He knew that eventually, inevitably, she would get bored with the kind, gentle Eric. She would start looking for drama and excitement elsewhere. She would start to drift away from him.
So he resurrected the ghost of Frederick.
Exactly. He wrote the threatening letters himself to keep her terrified. He purposely created a psychological situation where she absolutely needed him. He was her only safe harbor, her only protector against this terrifying ghost from her past.
He isolated her emotionally.
Yes. He made sure she couldn't even look at another man because she was far too busy looking over her shoulder in terror.
That is the ultimate form of gaslighting. He is physically comforting her with one hand, wiping her tears, and writing her death threats with the other.
Precisely. As Poirot brilliantly says at the end, he loved her, and in the end, you see, he made his boast good.
If I can't have her, no one can.
That was the ultimate trigger. She had recently started to show a real interest in Richard Carey. The magic was starting to work on someone else. Leitner realized his iron grip was slipping. He decided that if she was going to leave him, whether mentally or physically, she simply had to die.
And the spooky mask she saw at the window.
It was just him. He probably put on a papier-mâché mask from the antiquities or just used the weird twilight lighting to look ghoulish, tapped on the window to scare her into a frenzy, and ran. It was all part of a calculated campaign to completely break her spirit before he finally killed her.
And the murder itself, he was up on the roof. It was the absolute perfect alibi because everyone in the house knew he was up there sleeping.
He prepared the heavy stone. He waited for the dead silence of the siesta. He dropped the stone and killed her. And then, playing the part of the grieving, frantic husband, he made sure he was the very first one to enter the room and find the body.
It's so chilling because he plays the nice guy of the story so perfectly. Everyone, including the reader, feels so sorry for him right up until the final reveal.
That was his perfect camouflage. His gentle nature made him entirely invisible as a suspect. Poirot was the only one who saw that extreme devotion can sometimes be just another word for violent possession.
And the handwriting on the letters. Nurse Leatheran actually noticed something early on, didn't she?
She did. She noticed a very distinct similarity in some of the letters, specifically the way the letter M was formed. But she immediately dismissed it because she simply couldn't believe Dr. Leatheran would do such a thing. Poirot realized that a man can change his face. He can change his name and his voice. But it is incredibly hard to change the fundamental, unconscious strokes of his pen when he is writing under stress.
So the story finally ends. Dr. Leatheran is arrested by the authorities. The happy family is completely destroyed.
Destroyed beyond repair. The aftermath of the book is incredibly bleak. The expedition dissolves immediately. You have these remaining people, Carey, Coleman, Emmett, left somewhere quite different mentally. Their entire world has been shattered. They realize they have been living with and taking orders from a literal monster.
And Nurse Leatheran just packs her bags and goes back to Devon, or wherever she's from, to write this manuscript for Dr. Riley.
And we, the readers, are left with the lingering image of a tragedy that wasn't about ancient curses or stolen gold or international spies, but about a marriage that was actually a psychological prison.
It really redefines the title of the work for me, Murder in Mesopotamia book by Agatha Christie. It sounds like a fun, exotic adventure, but it's actually a suffocating domestic horror story.
It is a profound tragedy of extreme possessiveness, brilliantly disguised as romantic devotion.
So, putting the book down, what does this all mean for us today? Why does this specific story stick with people so long after the golden age of detective fiction?
I think it forces us to look at the relationships around us with a much more critical eye.
How so?
We often mistake controlling behavior for protection. We mistake extreme, isolating jealousy for intense romantic love.
Dr. Leatheran is a monster, yes, but he is a monster born out of a very human, very toxic desire to own another person completely. It's a very modern psychological theme.
And it also really makes you wonder about the closed circles in your own life.
Indeed. You sit next to colleagues every single day at work. You have friends you've known for years. But do you really know their history? Do you actually know who they were 15 years ago?
Or if the person sitting across from you is actually the person they say they are. A truly terrifying thought to leave us with.
That is all for today's deep dive into the fascinating world of Agatha Christie. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.
Goodbye.